Daniel McDonald to commence our event with a welcome to country.
Wow, you all look fantastic today. It's such a beautiful day, isn't it? And it's amazing to see all your smiles here today. Thank you, Liz. My name is Daniel McDonald, and I'm wearing green and blue striped t-shirt with a blue jacket, blue jeans, brown hair, brown eyes, blue glasses, and a tummy that makes me look 18 years pregnant. I'm a proud Gadigal man. I'm an artist and an actor, and I go by the name Deadly Hand Talk. I'm a member of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. And I'm also a Brand X chairman, and I'm here to welcome you here to Gadigal country. I would like to pay my respects to all Aboriginal elders, past and present, and I would like to respectfully acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brother and sisters joining us here today. It doesn't matter which Aboriginal nation that you have come from. All of you, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, are brothers and sisters. As we joyfully gather here today, it is right to pay honour to the traditional custodians of this land and waters. Today is the 24th of November 2025, and we have a special event for accessible arts. Access, ideas and insight, delving into disability leadership. And I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this event. There are many different cultures and great diversity in Australia. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody on the panel today. It's very exciting. I know Paul very well. Hi, Paul. I would like to tell you a story from one of my paintings, and it's called Start New Beginnings. Always, today is not the same chapter. Chapters of the past. You might be watching a dark sky, but waves are smoothing the edges. If you are hurting from the past, then sit on the sand. Watch the sunrise in the morning. Listen to your heart. Smell the sea mist brought in by the breeze. Feel your hand swirl in the sand. Everyone is around you. You are never alone. Value life's simplest things. Pleasures. Find meaning in the small things and magic in every experience. Start new beginnings. On Gadigal land today, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are from, but you are here on Gadigal land. You are remembering the past and the present. Acknowledgement is important. Inclusion, understanding, love each other, respect each other. I would like to say thank you to the staff for organising this event. Remember, please keep in contact with your family and friends. Travel home safely. Have a wonderful Christmas and a happy new year, and I will see you again in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for your warm welcome to country and for being such an important part of each of our Access ideas and insights over the past 3 years. Welcome, everyone. If you missed it a moment ago, my name is Liz Martin and I'm the CEO here at Accessible Arts. I am sporting black jeans, black t-shirt and a Miami Vice style white blazer with a mullet. And you could guess that I'm probably middle-aged. Accessible Arts is proudly disability-led and the peak arts and disability organisation for New South Wales. We advance the rights of and opportunities for people with disability who are deaf to develop and sustain professional careers in the arts and have equitable access to arts and culture across New South Wales through a multitude of disability-led programs, services and partnerships. Everything we do is done in partnership and collaboration with a focus on building community, knowledge and culture together. Next year, Accessible Arts turns 40, a milestone built on the creativity and commitment of so many board members, staff and volunteers over the years. Today we dedicate this Access Ideas and Insights event to one of those exceptional contributors, our late board member Fiona Winning. Fiona was a passionate advocate for accessible arts and her insight, generosity and leadership left a lasting mark on both our organisation and the wider sector. As both a board member of Accessible Arts and head of programming here at the Sydney Opera House, she brought wisdom, warmth and unwavering commitment. We honour Fiona's legacy today. I would now like to invite Alex Jones, Senior Manager Access here at the Sydney Opera House, to give an opening address.
Thank you so much, Liz. And my name's Alex, and I am wearing a dark shirt with some flowers on it, and bright white pants, and I have brown hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a lanyard around my neck which says the Opera House. Liz, I want to thank you so much for your words and the tribute to Fiona. She'll be sorely missed. And we really value her amazing mark that she left working with Accessible Arts and here at the Opera House. She was involved in the historical part of the arts, and we really want to acknowledge that. And Daniel, thank you so much for welcoming us here, and we're on Tubagali land. And Tubagali is where the Sydney Opera House stands. And this is Bennelong Point. And I also want to acknowledge everyone in the room, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander friends and family, leaders, colleagues, and anyone else in the room and online as well today. I'm really feeling humbled and very proud and privileged to welcome my community here to the Opera House, to the Utsen Room, right here where we are this afternoon, and to share our knowledge about disability leadership in the arts and sharing it on Gadigal land. Tubagali actually has a significant meaning, and it says meeting and gathering for thousands of years here. And what it means is where knowledge and water meet. And why it is because the fresh water and the salt water meet right here. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Uncle Paul as well for receiving your Lifetime Award of Acknowledgement from Creative Australia 2025, so honouring his leadership in the First Nations arts and advocacy in arts and disability. So congratulations, Uncle Paul. And moments like this make me feel truly, truly proud to be here and working as a senior leader here at the Sydney Opera House. and welcoming, our partner events here with Accessible Arts and the focus on disability leadership. And that key really is something, it means so much to me. It's something that's really close to my own heart. I'm a person with a disability. I'm a deaf person. I use Auslan. And the Sydney Opera House has actually acknowledged me as a skilled individual and leader and someone who has values regardless of being deaf and having a disability. They see the value I contribute to the Opera House, and it's one example of success and in a disability leadership space. Recently, we have employed a full-time in-house interpreter here at the Opera House to work with us, and it's not my interpreter, it's actually our interpreter. So this is a commitment that any organisation should be making for any workplace. Without further ado, back to you, Liz. We invite you to welcome and introduce all of our panel members here and our leaders to talk about what it takes to thrive as a disability leader in the arts and what the world has to do to make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Alex. We're so excited to be partnering once again at the Sydney Opera House on our Access, Ideas and Event Insight series. Today's panel focuses on disability leadership, which feels especially meaningful given the significant changes happening across the arts sector. I'm sure we'll touch on many of these shifts in our conversation today. A sincere thanks to the Sydney Opera House for hosting us as we kick off one of the many wonderful events happening in the lead up to International Day of People with Disability. Today, I'm joined on stage by three exceptional leaders. Please welcome Uncle Paul Calcott, Wiradjuri artist and community elder, who was just last week awarded the 2026 Creative Australia Arts and Disability Award for Established Artist. Congratulations, Uncle Paul.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Eliza Hull, brilliant musician, writer and disability advocate. And Sarah-Mace Dennis, National Director of Arts and Disability Network Australia. Before we begin today's conversation, I do want to acknowledge that Access is a place of learning. These events are spaces where we can explore, question and grow together. It's okay for us to stumble over language or use the words that feel most authentic to each of us. What matters is that we're here to listen, share and learn from one another. These conversations help us grow as a sector and move towards a more accessible, inclusive and welcoming arts community. And just one more reminder before we almost get started. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of this. So if you're online, you'll be able to submit your questions through Slido. And for those of you in the room, we'll bring a microphone to you. So let's dive in. Welcome, panel. And our first question, I'm asking each of you, what does leadership mean to you in your work? Sure.
All right. I guess for me, it means building community, a lot of listening, bringing people with me, and I guess never stopping as well, like still keeping that fire within me and knowing my values and the message that I want to send. But also, I think about this a lot, is not gatekeeping, like not always, when opportunities come to me as a leader in the music industry or space, trying to make sure that I continually think of others and give opportunities when I can. So I think, always looking at the table and going who's not here as well, so that I can make sure that I bring others up as I do my leadership.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of similar things to say. For me, it's really about creating space. And I think it's about creating space for a diverse group of people in community to come together so that I can learn how to do things from different perspectives. I think thinking collectively and having people in a room that all think differently is really important to leadership. I think looking at things curiously, I think challenging my own habitual ways of thinking and responding to the voices around me and listening to those. But at the end of the day, also being the one to make a stand in spaces that I can stand in and fight for those voices and what the community feel is important.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Daniel for the welcome to country. As a Wiradjuri man, it's very important to have that blessing from the traditional owners before conducting business. So it means a lot to me, and I feel comfortable now to be able to have a yarn and conduct business with knowing the traditional owners have given us their blessing for that as well. So thanks, Daniel, for that very much. And also just a quick descriptor, I'm a fair-skinned black fella. When one of your grandfather's names is Paddy Vickery from Ireland, no matter how black one side of your family is, you're going to get some rangers, and I'm one. I'm tall, I'm in a bright orange wheelchair, I'm wearing a white sort of shirt, I've got some ochre on my forehead, I'll explain later. Black pants and just a good-looking old black fella, so that's me. So, but I think leadership for me and culturally is about finding opportunities for other people to shine. It's about finding the best in people and helping them bring that to the table. And for me too, if someone opens a door, I stick my foot in that door and keep it open as long as I can to get as many people through as possible as well. So it's about providing opportunities for people. And I think as an elder, I always look for someone to pass the baton to and share that knowledge so that when I'm sort of gone across to the dreaming, other people have that knowledge that I've shared with them to make sure our legacy keeps going. It's doing that. And I think having the three of us here on the panel is another point. I was in a community once out in Alikaran and I did some artwork, and a very important old elder there said to me, "I don't understand that symbol." And I explained to him what it was, and I said, "So we don't use that symbol." And I said, "Do you want me to change it?" He goes, "No. Now I know your way, now I know my way, now I know two ways." So all of us here, we get to know each other's way, and by the end of this session, hopefully we'll all know many ways about conducting business.
Uncle Paul, how can the arts sector learn from First Nations leadership models grounded in collective knowledge, country and kinship?
Oh, look, that's a whole conversation on its own. But look, the interesting thing is we have a symbol for an elder. We have 200-odd language groups, but many of our symbols are universal. They may be called different things, but the symbol means the same thing. One of the symbols we use for an elder is the U shape. The U shape is used to represent a person, because when you sit on the ground after having a yarn, that's the mark your bottom and your legs leave. So that's the imprint you leave on the ground. The symbol many of us use for an elder is that symbol around another U shape. And what that says is somebody there nurturing, protecting, looking after another person. And that's the role of our elders. But the good points about that symbol is it's gender neutral. It doesn't identify gender. It's a person, a leader. And also in our community, leadership isn't by one person. It's many people, many different knowledge. If I go to the table, there's got to be women's business there, men's business, different elders there, representing the diversity of our community. So leadership is about representing that diversity, making sure everyone has a voice, everyone's represented. And I think the thing too with our leadership as well is it's not something we recruit. There's not an application process. There's not putting in the application who does the best interview. Leadership in our community is picked by the community. It's about seeing who does the work, who's out there, and supporting them in that and acknowledging that. So it's very different where you're not selected on academic qualifications, which many of our mob have incredible academic qualifications, but it's about what you do in community and how you support. For me, it was a massive honour when I was started to be referred to as uncle in community, because that, to me, was a massive honour that I was being considered and treated as an elder. It also comes with a lot of responsibility because you have to behave yourself in public then because everyone's watching. So I think for us, it's very much based on the person, what you bring, and there's not just one leader. It's lots of people come together with that shared knowledge and they all bring something to the table.
I love that. Thanks, Uncle Paul. Sarah, you were appointed Director of ADNA this year, the Arts and Disability Network Australia. For those who might not be familiar, can you tell us a bit about ADNA?
Of course, but first I'll begin by giving an image description. Sorry, I forgot about that earlier. I'm wearing a long black skirt and a black shirt with a jacket over the top, which is tan and purple and a little bit sparkly. And I have a short blonde fine bob and a middle age, unfortunately. So ADNA, Arts and Disability Network Australia, is the new national gateway for arts and disability culture. We are formed of 7 state and territory arts and disability peak bodies who came together really to form a national voice and to pool resources between the 7 organisations. There are years and years of experience of working with community, working with different organisations, and they thought it was time before they hired me to come together and really work collectively to go about creating a national voice and working together to create change. I feel it's a really exciting moment in Australia. ADNA has formed out of a new focus on disability arts and culture, and we're working with artists, arts workers, and the screen sector. So looking to really grow the community, invite people into the community, and see how working together we can create change and showcase the work of artists nationally. There are a few ways that we're doing this. The first thing is connecting. So at the moment, we're building a national database of deaf and disabled artists, arts workers, and screen practitioners. If you're interested, please go to our website and sign up to our mailing list, because that's where you'll get on the database and then hear the information that will be coming out. We're also looking at building a national map at the moment, so mapping not only artists across the country, but also organisations and allies and government partners, so we can get a picture of that and see how it all works together. A really big thing for ADNA is communication. And we're in the early stages of developing our new digital platform, which is just a fancy word for website. It's going to be called ADNA Channel, and we actually launched a tender for that last week. So that's on our website. We want to work with deaf and disabled designers or design agencies to help us build that. The channel will contain national resources, so things like access riders, access information. It will also have a national artist database, information about organisations. The map, which I said we're in the process of building, will sit on our ADNA channel. And there will also be ADNA channels. So this is a really exciting part of the project. We'll be commissioning 4 video works a year that think about the aesthetics of accessibility, and they will be shown on that site. So a real way of celebrating accessibility and thinking about what we can do as a group. The other part about ADNA is leadership. So we're looking at leadership in our sector, not only how we provide people with opportunities to contribute to leadership, but also looking at leadership in the consortium. So we sit on a range of panels, such as the Equity Advisory Group. We're also working with the Code and also Equi Arts. So really working on the ground with our community and bringing that voice up into the different infrastructure that can work with arts and disability culture. So one thing that I'll just finish on is, as I said, we've launched our tender for our new website. We've also launched a video commission, a photography commission, and a postcard commission. So the photography commission, we want photos of Australian arts and disability culture, and you'll be paid to use them in our promotions. We've also commissioned a postcard so that that we can hand that out at events. And our first video commission is about the voice of arts and disability culture in Australia. So if you're an artist or screen practitioner interested, go to our website and have a look at that. And all of those commissions, we made a decision that all of ADNA's work will be produced in collaboration with people with lived experience, and that's a key criteria in everything. So we're really excited about working with artists with lived experience to change the face of the digital landscape as we make these resources.
In the first question, you each spoke about collaboration, collective leadership, bringing others with you. Sarah, in terms of ADNA, ADNA is bringing together multiple organisations to build a national vision for disability arts. What does leadership look like when it's shared and collective?
Yes, ADNA, as I said, we are a consortium of 7 state and territory peak bodies, and they are Access to Arts, Accessible Arts, Arts Access Darwin, Arts Access Victoria, Access Arts Queensland, and Inside Arts from the Northern Territory. I don't think I missed anyone.
I think that's it.
Quite a bit of a mouthful.
Yep.
But in terms of collective leadership, I think as ADNA, we have actually really decided that this journey, we are almost facilitators. We're thinking of it as a national gateway for arts and disability culture. And what we mean by that is that we're on this journey with our community. That's why the consortium has come together to do the work of the people they've been working with for so long. So I suppose in terms of leadership, we've decided one of the things that you might see on our website, it's time to build a new arts and disability network, one that belongs to you, the community. So really, not only are we working together as a consortium, but we're also working together on the ground to really go out and listen to people to find out what they want and how we can create more opportunities for disability leadership in the arts. And I'll finish that by saying how important access is to this question, because we want to make everything we do accessible. And that's about going out and finding ways that everyone can participate, even if it's us on the ground doing the work, to work with you so that you can participate in any one of the projects that we're doing, and also thinking about embedding access costs into all of our work that we make as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Eliza, you're a storyteller through both music and writing. How do you see creative practice contributing to community and shared understanding?
Okay, I'd also like to do an image description because
Sure.
I forgot. So I am wearing black jeans and black boots and a black singlet and a red blazer. And I have my hair up today, and it's kind of blondie brown hair, and I'm also middle-aged as well. So I guess I feel like, for me, I've realised that art or music, writing, is actually really the way forward, because it is a representation. And it's tricky, you know. I guess I feel like you and I have spoken a lot about this, is like, how much do you share about your disability, or how much do you share your art and not talk about your disability? And for me, I feel like I, for a really long time, never spoke about my disability. In fact, I would hide it and not want to walk in front of people because I walk differently. And then it actually ended up doing a complete flip, where I started to really speak about it and advocate for change in the art space, in terms of the music industry, and also writing children's books and a book on parenting with disability. And so everything became about disability. And so it's almost now, I realise that what I hope can happen is that we actually have art at the forefront, because that is the power, the storytelling. Art is so important. It's, you know, my language is through art, and I love looking at art and being part of any artistic practice. So I feel like that in itself is actually a way forward to understand humans of all kinds. And for me, I think that it actually is where I hope to kind of be, is that by just being a disabled artist is actually changing narrative and reducing stigma and changing attitudes and shifting the way that people see disability by just actually being a disabled artist and maybe not necessarily having to share every single part of my medical condition. So I guess that's where I've kind of landed now. And yeah, so I feel like it's so powerful, and it can change people's hearts and minds and souls. And that's what we need more of, is disabled art.
Uncle Paul, you've spoken about building resilience through yarning and sharing stories. How do you practice strengthen? How do these practices strengthen community and connection?
I think with the yarning, I run a small group called Noonaron. We're a great little art group of first artists with disabilities, way above our weight, not funded or anything. But what it does when you come together using art and storytelling in yarning circles is you start to connect to country and to your culture. Many of our mob with disabilities spent time in institutions or didn't have time to live on country or were separated from the family and didn't often go through many different practices and that as well. So when we come together and use the art and storytelling, what it does, as I mentioned earlier, that some of our symbols are the same symbol no matter what language group they belong to. And what happens is people start to be able to share their story through this artwork and build that resilience. It also identifies things such as social isolation. So people come together with other artists and other members of their group and start to build that resilience. Elders start to share stories. People start to have a sense of belonging. And a couple of examples that come out of that I'd share is that we had, two stories I might share quickly. I'm a bit of a storyteller, I'll try to tone it in a bit. But we had a young man who was introduced to our art group who has a learning disability, FASD. He's in the special ed class at school, typical, naughty kid, causing trouble and everything. But a mate of mine who's a school teacher there said he does beautiful artwork. So he brought him over, he introduced me to him and his older sister, and his artwork was wonderful for this young boy who was only 17. So he did a couple of paintings. Anyway, we got him to do a big painting about his strength, like resilience, what keeps him strong. And he painted this beautiful story about how his grandparents passed down the dreaming stories to him and how he got to dance at the Commonwealth Games and how he connects back to his culture. And he did this amazing thing he developed, and it represents a double helix. And what it is said, that's my connection to all my culture and country. But here's a young fellow with a learning disability going down to an atomic level virtually to say his relation to community. So we ended up doing an exhibition. We had the opportunity to do an exhibition at the United Nations in Geneva and in the main lobby. So we weren't funded. I was funded to go over, but it can't just be me. So we begged, borrowed and stealed, and we did some paintings, we got sponsorship, and we got him and two other artists with disabilities to come along. Now, here was this young man, back here was in special ed class, so he's a bit of a troublemaker, but he was at the United Nations holding court with diplomatic representatives from all around the world, sharing his story, his culture, what he does. Then he went on UN radio and did an interview, and then he was commissioned by the United Nations to develop an artwork for the dining room depicting his journey. So you have a young man from a special ed class. Once you connect him to culture, to family, you change the subject matter, you change the environment. He became the teacher. He represented his country on the world stage and did a commission for them. How does that affect a young man's self-esteem and his connection back to community? His community was so proud of him for what he did. And that was because we were able to create a space where he felt belonged, we shared knowledge, shared stories, and he got a chance to shine. And we had another young man who has Down syndrome. And he would come along to the art group. And at first he was doing little paintings, people were doing stencils and he was dotting around them. And we said, no, come on, you can do your own painting. Let's start talking about some stories. And he was trying to explain to me, and he has a speech impediment because of his disability, but I tell other young people he has an accent. So I say, you come across people with different accents and you've got to get used to it. Well, Jai has an accent as well, you've got to get used to. Anyway, we rang his dad. And he got on the phone, said to his dad what he wanted to paint. And his dad said, I can't believe it. He wants to paint the tree that he sat under with his grandmother when she told him stories. He said, I didn't even know he remembered that tree. So he did some amazing paintings. Long story short, he has a painting now hanging in the United Nations in the Australian Embassy in Switzerland. He came to New York last year and he sat with his father while his father spoke about his son's art and storytelling and his achievements. So that was another impact on his father, who thought, I would never thought that I'd be sitting at the United Nations in New York talking about my son's achievements at the UN. And so he got to do that. And young Joe, we had his posters with QR codes that took people to him telling the story. His artwork was around Article 8 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. So here's a young man with Down syndrome creating a painting that talks about awareness raising and celebrating the achievements of people with disabilities. And he was handing those out at the UN. If you didn't take one, he tapped on the shoulder and made you take one, sort of stuff. But then we were invited from there to go to Korea by the Korean government to do an exhibition there. So again, we had this young fella who, troublemaker at school, going to the Parliament House in South Korea, presenting his artwork, playing yidaki, doing traditional dance. Jai coming along as well, playing yidaki, practicing the yidaki, the didgeridoo every day on the bus to and from the meetings to get really good at it. And so there again we had, because we created an environment where people came together, told stories, felt safe, gave them a chance to shine, we had 2 young men with disabilities travelling to different countries, representing their culture, their community on the world stage. And that was because we just created a different environment and we changed the subject matter. So there's simple things about the importance when we come together and share stories. And community is made up of all different people and individuals. So we can make many individuals strong, we make a community strong. So that's just the stories that I've had the absolute honour to be a part of and to witness and to see it all happen.
Uncle Paul and everyone on the panel, really, that makes me think about what you would have liked growing up and becoming emerging leaders through that sort of process. What would have helped you? And looking back, now that we've clarified that we're all middle-aged, what would you have liked to have had as you were sort of stepping into that leadership role along the way? What kind of supports would you have liked to have had?
Look, the thing when I was growing up, I contracted polio back in 1960.
Yep.
My father was very fearful. They were still taking children away then. His 2 younger brothers were put into foster care. They were part of the stolen generation. He was very fearful of having a fair-skinned son with a disability that they would take me away. So we didn't practice culture publicly. It was an internal thing. And so I didn't start to catch up until I was in my 30s. When I started, my dad was passing away and we had long conversations. And I miss where I would have loved to have got an early start on culture. But also in some respects, it brought us together because suddenly all my cousins, we all started to come together and we thought, we're the next generation. We have to pick up our game and we have to start representing our culture. Our parents couldn't be openly about it because they were scared of being taken away or losing their children. So I would have loved to have more connection to culture. I would have liked to have done it earlier than in my 30s. But in saying that, it is what it is. And I think maybe I wasn't ready until in my 30s and had the tenacity and that as well. The leadership thing, I don't see myself as a leader. I see myself as part of a lot of group, and I just happen to be the biggest mouth. Like an argument. So it's just happens sort of stuff. But I have amazing people behind me all the way, and I'm thankful for that. So now what I want to do is make sure that younger people, my great nieces and nephews, and my nephews, don't have to wait till their 30s to learn about their culture and connection. I take that responsibility now, and my other cousins and my sisters. Let's start doing that now. That's what I sort of wish I had more opportunity. But when I reflect back, a lot of the things we did as a family were cultural, but we didn't know that because we were just in our own little bubble, and that was just how we did stuff. And it wasn't until you started having yarns with other families, you thought, we do that differently sort of stuff. And like, for instance, we wanted a dog. My dad would not let us have a dog. He thought he wanted chooks. Animals that could produce something, feed, eggs, everything else. And we wanted a dog, and he wouldn't let us have a dog. We had this stray. So we went to our auntie, who was Dad's older sister, and the elder in the family, and told her we wanted the dog. So she then made Dad let us have the dog, and he couldn't dispute it because she was the family elder. So we learned about elders and their role in community and power back then, sort of stuff. So even though we weren't told, that's a cultural way in our family, that's how you did it. You went to the older of the way, and it still happens now. So now I think I wish we had more knowledge about that. But it's also make sure now that what I do is try to make sure that my little great nieces and nephews have their connection to culture and their family, and they know where they're from, and they're proud of where they're from, and can talk and do language. We talk little bits of language and different bits and pieces and paint. So missed out on it, but really doing okay. It all happens for a reason. But I would have liked that more. But I've got amazing people and elders and aunties who have since passed, and they're there now, and they've done wonderful things for me, and I feel they're with me now, hanging around, they got my back, sort of stuff, because I sort of said to them, don't let me stuff it up.
And Eliza, what about you? Are there certain things that you would have liked put in place when you were younger?
Yeah, I wish that I had have known the disability community. Like, I think that I really didn't know any disabled people, and I guess we were, growing up in the. I was born in '85, so showing my age. We didn't have the online space that we do have today, which is so great to have. Like, I'm constantly talking to other deaf and disabled people online, and I feel like that community just, it feels like home, and I love it. So I guess that, and also just not having any representation of artists or musicians with disability, and noticing time and time again how inaccessible stages and award shows on TV were, and kind of going, I'm not going to be able to get up on that stage, therefore maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I shouldn't be a musician.
Yeah. I think for me it wasn't even that conscious, noticing those things. I think it was a very unconscious kind of thing, and it wasn't until much later that I sort of clocked that these spaces weren't thought of for me, I think. Sarah, what about you? What sort of things would you have liked to put in place in terms of leadership and supporting?
Well, I suppose I had a very severe traumatic brain injury 17 years ago. So I think my early experiences of living in this different body were very much about resistance and binaries and dealing with medical models. And going back to, I have been working in higher education since my early 20s, so going back to teaching after that, I think it would have helped me if earlier I had again found my community, which I found probably only 6 or 7 years ago, and a community of disabled leaders who really taught me what I could stand for, and also how to redevelop my voice. I think that was a very clear thing to me. My voice felt like it was taken away a lot. So I think community, collectivity, and also this thing about creating space. I think what would have really helped me for spaces to be a little bit more plastic, like the brain is. So to give and receive form a little bit when you're working in an institutional space or for a big organisation. I think we're moving towards that, definitely, but I think that has come from this community really advocating and working together to create change and to make, as you say, to make people aware of what kind of change is needed for spaces to be more inclusive.
I want to talk now about the invisible labour that we all do, educating, advocating, fixing the system. How do you sustain yourselves while supporting others and sharing responsibility? Eliza, shall we start?
I guess, yes. I think burnout is a real thing, because I think especially when you're not seeing the changes that you're advocating for. I've realised time and time again the advice that I give arts organisations or, various representatives in the music industry or writing industry, and you give so much of yourself and you share your personal experience of being disabled and the experiences of others. And then they say, yes, we're going to make all these changes. And then they do sometimes for a month, and then they stop. And I keep seeing it over and over again. And I think that's when I most feel burnt out, because you kind of feel like you're just pushing this thing up a hill and you never see it rolling down, you never see the impact. But I guess the other thing that I do to sustain myself is, I guess seeing some success stories and seeing the changes. It's not all bad, and we are seeing such shifts and changes, which is keeping me still going. And I always just think about the next generation, the next people coming forward, and I think by sharing opportunities and with others takes the weight off me, but also gives other people opportunities. And I just keep thinking about what it felt like to be told for me by producers, don't walk in your music video because nobody will like your music. They're the kind of the stories that I keep going back to and remembering, or still hearing how much stigma still exists in the music industry and discrimination in the arts space. And so just kind of remembering why we are doing this and how important it is that we keep going, because we need this. We need art, and we need disabled art, and that's always my priority.
Yeah. Uncle Paul, how do you sustain yourself?
Look, I think one thing I wanted to point out too is that I grew up in an era where anything today is a huge improvement on what it was back then. I grew up before the Disability Discrimination Act was around. So I was in my 20s during the 80s trying to find work, find a job. And back then you could be blatantly discriminated against and told, I'm sorry, you're not the look we want. We don't want someone with a disability. It's not a good look. And you didn't have technically a leg to stand on because that was perfectly okay to say that sort of thing. I remember my dream was to be a flight attendant with Qantas, and they told me that, no, you're limp, you wouldn't be able to serve properly, and people don't want to see people with disabilities during their flights. Back in the 80s, a friend of mine, a couple of friends, booked a holiday on a cruise ship. The cruise ship found out that they had disabilities and refunded them their fares, because they said, people come on these ships for a holiday, they don't want people with disabilities, it brings down the whole atmosphere. So I grew up in an era when that was the norm. So I got into trouble in my teens for speaking up and being a loudmouth and carrying on and being refused to be called a patient and just being known as a person. Culturally, we're not a diagnosis-based culture in Indigenous culture, it's needs-based. I go out in the community with my walking stick and no one cares whether I have cerebral palsy, acquired brain injury, polio, whatever. They just call me walking stick man. So they're not interested in a diagnosis, it's just that's uncle, he needs a walking stick. So, but I think what sustains me is the improvement since then, the voice. I have amazing family and friends around me, extended family, that on social media give me little words of encouragement that keep me going. I have an amazing husband that's just by my side all the time and doing stuff. Apart from the disability side, I often have to navigate the intersectionality of being gay, Aboriginal, and having a disability. So you cop it from all these different areas, and even though I don't look Indigenous, I hear horrible things people say because they don't think I'm Indigenous. But my dad said that. He said, you're designed to go in by stealth. He said, they don't know you're there till it's too late and they've opened their mouth and stuck both feet in it and then you come out, sort of stuff. So, but what sustains me now are the people around me. This is my life. It's part of who I am. I've had huge elders before me who I still think with me, and that's why I wear the white ochre, because that's me acknowledging and respecting my ancestors and my elders that got me here today. And I love it. It's who I am. It's part of my community. I love sitting down with a bunch of mob, painting, sharing stories, and people with disabilities. They're my friends. They're not only people I work with, but they're friends and community, so I hang out with them. But also, as I said, I have an amazing husband who knows when sometimes I just need to be still, and he just knows I need that space. I've had enough. He knows when it's cool for me to sometimes cry because something happened. And I remember once in South Korea, some people said to me, how do you keep strong? How do you keep doing this? And I got really emotional. I said, I'm not strong. I just hang in there. There's times I become a blithering heap. But there's people that have gone before me, and I feel a legacy to keep things going. But, the chance to sit here today has been nervous as hell coming here to talk about to everyone today. But the chance to share stories and talk up the amazing people I get to hang out with, so that's a huge honour. That keeps me going. I think, this is a buzz to be able to share the stories and let people know that there's amazing people and artists with disabilities out there doing incredible stuff. And just this great opportunity to share. So that keeps me going. And if I crash and burn every now and again, that's fine. Bottle of vodka. No.
Sarah, what about you? What sustains you in this work?
Similar to the other responses, I would completely say it's my community, and my community does have artists with disabilities, but also allies, friends, And in the really hard times I've had where I'm fighting a really big fight, I think it's all of those people being there to talk to, discuss problems, and also I think work together to try and create change. I think what gives me energy, I'll touch on the younger people. I've worked a lot as an educator and mentor, and I think when you're fighting for change, it is really nice to see when that change is made in someone's life, or maybe you see that something changes in an organisation and you can see how that's going to have a rundown effect. So I really think the next generation is something that does give me energy and feels quite exciting, and contextualizes why we're doing the work that we're doing, not only to make it better for the people around us, but also the people coming through.
Sarah, I have another question for you, which is, what do you see as the biggest opportunity right now for a national shift in how disability leadership is recognised and resourced?
Sure. I don't know if I've mentioned, but I've returned from 12 years in the UK 3 months ago, and I'm so excited to be back in Australia. I think it's, in terms of shift, I can see in the work we're doing with ADNA, there's a really nice intersection in the creative ecosystem. Government is opening up and working with us. That's why ADNA exists. The community is also feeling the momentum of that, I think. Liz and I have been in some meetings recently where we've just said it feels like a really nice energy at the moment. So I think that this is a moment where things are changing, and I think the advocacy work we're doing for ADNA, and then I'm sure everyone in this room is doing, and the creation and artwork, it's a moment where it is time to really come together and work with the infrastructures that are opening up to build change. One thing that I want to add to that is I don't think change is an immediate thing. I think that's something really important for us all to remember, and particularly around access. Sometimes we need to think about how we pause and reflect. And I think Josh from Access Victoria and I were talking about this at our ADNA meeting last week, not being a Band-Aid, but I think it's a really exciting moment to do the hard work because things are opening up, and work together to try and build a kind of base of slow change maybe, so that we see real difference in the future for the next generation and for people today as well.
I'm going to open it up for questions from the room and from online. Are we ready to go with that? We have a microphone that will come to you. Do we have any questions in the room?
Yes. Hello. Yes. No.
So just down the front.
Oh.
Oh.
Online first.
Online first.
I've got a question from online. In what ways can we keep the door open for those coming in after us? What are some practical ways we can make sure a space stays accessible once we leave?
Uncle Paul, you spoke about keeping the door jammed open for others. How do you do that?
Look, I think by wedging a brick in it, but maybe I think it's about making sure they understand the value we bring to the meeting, and that value is, they can't go without it. Educating people. It's also just making sure you get other people in there before you leave and settled in. So it's about not just being alone all the time. An example is, and sometimes what happens is organisations and state bodies think that just having one Indigenous person on a board or there is all they need. That's fine. And then if you fall off your perch or leave, there isn't really an opening for anybody else. So you've got to make sure you get other people into that door while you're there, so when you all leave, they've got the table. An example of how silly it is sometimes is that in Queensland, I was the only person on the Queensland State Disability Advisory Council. Now in Queensland, statistically, there's over 240,000 Indigenous people registered. The last statistics on disability said that around 30% of First Nations people are living with long-term disability or health concerns. So in Queensland, that equates to possibility of 80,000 Indigenous people living with disability. And I was it. I was the one person representing 80,000 diverse groups of Torres Strait Islanders, South Sea Islanders, the many disabilities, women's business, the LGBTIQ plus brother, boy, sister, girl business. And that's what we have to change. It's not okay to have one person at the table. So when you're in there, you get others in. And you make sure you create those spaces and bring those people in so that when you go, there's somebody right there alongside you that'll take that seat. It's not easy to do because we've got to change a lot of attitudes and that as well. But it's about, bringing it to the table and just keep going and just, fighting for it, I suppose.
Sarah, did you want to
I
add?
wanted, to add to your point, Paul, and bring in a point you made earlier about storytelling here, because I think that that's really important when the door is open and the change has happened. How do we as a community communicate those stories so that people are aware of what these changes, how they change lives and how they allow more work to be created and things like that. So I think that there's a nice intersection between the importance of storytelling as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, from the room.
My name is Mukava Oyikomien.
As an established actor who lives with autism and a speech difference, I've learned that these aspects of who I am don't define my abilities or limit the quality of my work. They're simply part of my identity, and most of the time they aren't even relevant to what I can bring to a role. My focus has always been on the craft, the discipline, and the passion I put into every opportunity. However, the journey to securing an agent can be a little more challenging. It's not about talent, it's about understanding. Many people in the industry are open and willing to collaborate with actors who have disabilities, but they often lack the experience or confidence to properly support us. So even though the intention is there, the practical knowledge and familiarity aren't always in place. This creates hurdles that shouldn't exist, but I also see the industry slowly evolving. With more awareness, education, and representation, more agents will learn how to work with disabled performers in a way that's respectful, supportive, and professional. I'm determined to be part of that progress. Also, I've got a question you might be able to answer, and thank you in advance for taking the time to help.
So, can I just, I'm not sure what the question is, but can I say, as people with disabilities, people living with disabilities, we navigate a world every day that hasn't been designed for us. And you as an actor and performer, I think even though your disability doesn't define you, but your experience, your tenacity and your ability to keep going, that impacts on what a deadly actor you must be, because you're not going to give up. So, so I think it's just keep hanging in there. The world is slowly changing, and I think our mob with disabilities in the arts hold a mirror up to the world, and they start to see your point of view and your journey in getting there. So sort of keep going there, keep hanging in there. We need to see more of our brothers and sisters with disabilities up there on the screen, in theatre, and not even just not just even playing a part of someone. The disability isn't part of their performance. It can just be part of a side thing. Like I saw a movie not long ago, and they had people with disabilities in this movie, but they weren't playing particular roles. Their disability wasn't relevant. They just happened to be on a board, and it was someone with a disability, just playing a normal role, part of the everyday thing there. And I thought, I want to see more of that. But, good on you, and hang in there, and your disability doesn't define you, but also I reckon it's give you the guts and the tenacity to navigate through a world and still hang in there and still come out strong. So I don't know what I can say. I'm not an actor. I did act straight for quite a few years. But I look forward to seeing you. Well, I'm going to remember this and hopefully see you in more on the screen and remember this day.
Did we have another question from online? In person, perhaps.
Yep.
Many years ago in my youth, I asked John Bell if I could come to the Shakespeare Company and do an administrative arts apprenticeship. He said, that's a great idea, but it doesn't exist. You can't. There was no facility in any way, shape or form at a higher education level to learn arts administration. Disability leadership adds a complexity to arts administration that goes beyond just running a dance theatre company, a painting studio, a ceramic studio. So my question to you as the panel is, what are the opportunities, and this picks up the vibe of the room, which is how can we open the door for the kids coming up behind us? And that makes me feel really old to say that. But what are the opportunities where we can, put a brick in the door of TAFE or somewhere to say, hey, if you want to be a leader in the disability sector, in the arts disability sector, it's going to take a certain acumen that you're not necessarily going to pick up at business school or somewhere else.
I'll take that one. I agree, we need many more disabled leaders in the arts. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot, actually I gave a presentation at Fremantle Biennale, Unlimited in the UK have been aiming to get, they're running a program. So for those of you who don't know, Unlimited, they work with artists with disabilities in a commissioning program. They're currently running an initiative to get, I think it's 19 or 23% of grants should be given to people with disabilities or access needs to reflect the amount of people with disability in our culture. And I think that this is a really interesting model and something that we can work on as a community and certainly as ADNA to look at leadership roles on boards, for example, where that can be a really great step up to give you more skills. So I think that will be part of our advocacy work, thinking about what is the percentage and how can we change the percentage. And speaking of that for acting and roles in front of and behind the screen as well, it should be something in every industry, I think. And to just close on answering your question, I think the relationship between being a disabled leader and access is incredibly important. It's important to understand what access is in your organisation and institution or whoever you're working for, but also think about as a leader what your access needs are and really working collaboratively to also address that so that disabled leaders don't burn out and they have equal opportunities, not only in leadership but throughout the workforce to be able to get into leadership positions, I think. So I think access is another question to touch on in that conversation.
Can I add too? I think we have to stop culturally and socially, we have to stop underestimating people with disabilities and what they can do. And as people with disabilities, we need to stop underestimating ourselves as well for what we can do. We often see in a lot of different organisations, the people leading them as CEOs are not always people or people with disabilities or people as part of the community they're representing. So, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, people are doing amazing jobs, but what often happens is that people with disabilities are on advisory boards or the board. So they're on advising type positions, but they don't get the opportunity to make decisions. So what I'd like to see is more pathways where people with disabilities are on advisory boards and boards. That's incredibly important. But how do we start mentoring? How do we start getting the young people to walk alongside CEOs and start to learn those skills, to be seen, to sit at a table, participate in a meeting and start to get the confidence to think, I can make a decision. If I make the wrong decision, it's not going to be the end of the world. We can sort it out. So I think we need to create those pathways, and I really think a lot of CEOs and leaders need to start stepping up and saying, okay, I'm happy to take in an internship. I would love to go to a meeting with all the CEOs of all the organisations and actually see people from the organisations they're representing sitting alongside them at the table, having a voice and learning and just being seen as part of that. So I think we're getting there, but I still would like to see I'd like to see actually part of a funding grant that you don't get your funding unless you provide pathways for people with disabilities to do that. So I think there's still things we can do, but we're getting there. So.
One other thing, just to add to that briefly, Paul, you spoke about this yesterday, the idea of what is required to get into a leadership role, and thinking that it's not necessarily always about how many qualifications you have or how many boards you've sat on, but looking at it from a perspective of what is your cultural experience, what energy do you bring, what is the personality that you'll bring this role to create leadership. And that's different. That's what you were mentioning yesterday, Paul. That's different culturally, I think.
Oh yes, identifying skills, that the difference between skills that are taught and skills that are earned. And the skills that are earned and lived are just as important in a resume as the skills you were taught.
I think we have another question online.
Yes, we do. Leadership can be shown in many different ways. How can the different types of leadership in different people be recognised? What can we all, as disabled people, do to practice leadership, whether we are young, middle-aged or older?
Want to take that one?
That's a big question. I think, just trust your instinct is like a big one, is believe in yourself. I know it sounds a bit, I guess cheesy, but I feel like, just trusting yourself, knowing your worth. And I think, I have been thinking about that as well, around that we do lead in different ways, and that's okay. And that we have different unique perspectives to bring to the table. We come with, different disabilities and different perspectives and different stories, and even ways to identify our disability. And I think it's beautiful that the community is so varied and we all have such a unique perspective. And I think that's what our community needs, is that, when we meet one disabled person, we meet one disabled person, and that's wonderful. So we have a full tapestry of different perspectives. So I guess for me, I would just say that you can lead in whatever way that looks like, and sometimes that can be from home, online or in person, and that all our perspectives are very valued and needed.
We've time for one more question. I think we're ready to rock over here up the front.
Sarah and Uncle Paul. As an analogy, I think we as individual artists are in a birdcage. It may be locked, whereas you have a little bit of freedom because of your experiences. So I know that both of you have been overseas, where you've had very good access, whether it be through government provisions. So what do you think Australia could do to become more advanced in that area in terms of, a world perspective that you've experienced?
Can I say some of my experience overseas? We're actually ahead of the game in regards to disabilities, with how some people are treated. I think, I don't know, it's really weird. We've all been in that cage, but sometimes for some reason something happens and you get a chance to get out. And to me, is when you get that chance to go overseas and speak. And it's not going overseas just for the sake of it. You've really got to think, how does that impact on our mob back here? And from a cultural perspective, and that's why when I had the opportunity, I got a grant to go and present at New York, I thought, I can't be the only Indigenous person speaking there. That's not right, and I don't want to do it. But we managed to beg, borrow and steal and get a couple more artists to go with us, and contributed our own funding as well to get there. So when we went as a group, and we were seen not just as one person, but a group of people. We made sure we presented ourselves as a group as well and tried to be very diverse. So the thing I'm thinking is, if you get that opportunity to go over again, how does it benefit everyone back here? How does that impact on our community? What am I doing this for? And who can I take with me? And we even did a cheeky thing as well in New York, which we probably could get arrested for, but in the General Assembly Hall in the United Nations headquarters, it's illegal to show any flags. You're not allowed to take any flags in there whatsoever. But 7 of us wore T-shirts with Indigenous flag in dot work on the T-shirts, and security wasn't sure whether they were flags or just nice artwork. So I think we were the first mob to get out there and show our flag at the United Nations in a way that's not supposed to be done. So I think it's taken little opportunities like that. If you get a chance to go over there, see what you can do, but don't go just for the sake of it. You've got to think, how will this impact back home? What can I take from this to make a difference back home, sort of stuff. So, but it's very complex. And again, I was blown away the first time I was approached to speak at the LGBTIQ plus conference at the United Nations. I did it as an artwork because I was scared stiff, and that's the only way I could talk to the artwork. But from that, I gave that artwork to the Canadian government as a message stick for our two-spirit mob in Canada and our brother boy and sister girls out here. So, and now, very beautifully, when the Canadian minister does anything around Pride, she does it in front of the artwork. So I tried to take that opportunity to share and connect our cultures and connect with other mob over there. So it's just weird, and you just got to grab it as you get it, mate, and see how it works, and just think in the back of your head, why am I doing this sort of thing? So, and I don't know how it happens. It just happens. Like that time to go over there just blew me away. But I thought, I've got to do this the best way I can. Does that make
Sarah,
sense?
did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would say, I think your question was also about the access landscape in different countries. And I don't think it's as simple as a kind of binary of this country's doing it this way and this country's doing it this way. My personal experience is access, again, is a lot about your community. And even if a country has good access support, it's how that you access that support and how you can get access. You know, for example, can you get access to a grant application? Sometimes not. And there might be support available, but it's about the community networks that will bridge that support. So I think that there's different positives and benefits in each country, but it really comes down to who your network is on the ground. And I would recommend, if you don't have a community already, it is the most important thing, I think, is to build that community and to advocate as a community as well. Just on the note that Paul was making about people working in different countries, one example I could give is Dan Dorr, who's an Australian artist living in the UK. I was a trustee of Kanduko Dance Company and watched Dan prepare for the last commission that they did, which was over and over and over again. And I will say that Dan is a fantastic example of someone who goes into a space and who works from his body and his experience and really advocates for access. He and Raquel, who was the artistic director of Kanduko for that show, really stood for the needs of rest. I think they ended up having Wednesday as a paid rest day for the dancers. And the way that I saw them work together from their experience to create what was real change in the production of that show. And then the show also embedded rest. So I think that they're the really exciting things, and that's one thing that I would bring it back to, is going back to your body and your experience of being in the world, the way that you perceive and feel the world, and how can you use that as a starting point to build community but also create change.
I just wanted to add something that is exciting seeing overseas is what people power can bring. So there's an incredible community that I work alongside in New York, and they're called Ramped. And I guess because I'm very heavily in the music space, but they're just a group of people that are networking with musical artists and producers and writers all across the world and trying to create like a large coalition. And the changes that they've created is like incredible. They're making huge changes with Netflix, making sure that artists with disability are, music's being used. They've got a ramp up onto the stage at the Grammys, which is something I've been trying to advocate from here at the Arias, and they still won't get a ramp up onto the stage because I just think that, disabled artists watching the Arias need to see a ramp so that they feel that they can be, that they can get up onto the stage. We need to have Auslan interpreters at major, music events and the arias. And it was so cool to see Pink singing at the Grammys, and there's an interpreter on stage with her. And that's just the things that need to happen. And so I feel like when you see a coalition doing that together, that's what can happen. And also in the UK, they have a great live music charter where I toured around for 5 weeks, and I was able to look at all the different venues I was going and seeing if they were a gold standard venue, a silver standard venue, or a bronze, which meant what kind of access they had, what kind of standard those venues were, just meant that I could tour and know that I was going to be able to get into the venue. And luckily, that is coming to Australia, thanks to Moena, who's in the Moena Colette, who's here. She's bringing all that knowledge from the UK, and that will be happening here in Australia with live music. So it's exciting times.
It is very exciting times, but unfortunately we are a little over time and we'll need to wrap up.
Yes, can I just, sorry. can I
Oh,
just
yes, of course.
A little thing that I thought, sorry, just in my head when I talk about community and individual advocacy and that as well, and how can people do it individually. Can I just say to people, what works for me is I found my tribe. So you can't do it on your own. So I found my tribe and mob that I hang out with. And a young fellow made this analogy once where he said, if you're a single twig you can snap, you get 50 twigs together and tie them together, nothing's going to break that. So even going overseas and finding things and doing art, and what can I do as an advocate? Find your tribe, work as a group, get that backup, get that support. And I think ADNA will play a huge part in that, in bringing all these individuals into one big tribe or your own tribes as well. So it's just a case we have to just work together. So.
On that note, can I end on a quote? Sorry. A very short quote by Carla Harris. The way to grow your power is to give it away. I think that's a nice...
And you can totally see why they're leaders, yeah? They just take the space and hold it. I just want to flag a couple of things and a few opportunities that I think some of you would be really keen to know about before we wrap up. Some of you may have heard that off the back of this, we've got a podcast series called Access Ideas and Insights Podcast. We have launched the third episode of that today. It's on the neurodiversity paradigm in theatre, and I urge you to check it out online. You can scan the QR code that is up there at the moment, or check out our website for more info. I also wanted to let you know about an exciting program that we're going to be launching in about a week's time. If you're a New South Wales-based musician, we're launching Songsmiths in about a week. It's been co-designed by 6 musicians with disability in partnership with APRA AMCOS and Arts Access Victoria and Accessible Arts. It's been funded by Sound New South Wales and Music Australia to roll out the pilot program in New South Wales. It's a paid opportunity for New South Wales musicians to collaborate new songs, writing, recording and releasing within accessible studios here in Sydney. It's pretty exciting. Creatability applications are now open for the 2026 Creatability Internship Program, which gives up to 16 creative practitioners with disability or who are deaf internship opportunities, paid internship opportunities, covering everything from TV production and puppet making to theatre programming and graphic design. The opportunity covers sound, screen and arts industries. You can apply via our website, with applications closing Monday the 15th of December. We have information about ADNA call-out. I will let you go online for further details, but please check it out. And feel free to apply. Reach out to the wonderful Sarah for more information. Lastly, please join me in thanking our incredible panel, Uncle Paul, Sarah and Eliza. I'd like to thank the Sydney Opera House team, especially Janelle and Alex, for partnering with Accessible Arts on today's event. A huge thank you as well to our streaming partners, Live Crowd, and to the wonderful Auslan interpreters, Shavoy, Dima and Paula. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my team here at Accessible Arts and for all the passion, enthusiasm and humour you bring every day that makes these events so brilliant. Thank you. I'd like to thank City of Sydney and Create New South Wales for the funding support that makes these events possible. And of course, we want to thank you, our audience. Your presence, engagement and continued support are making these conversations terrific. Next year, Accessible Arts turns 40 and we look forward to celebrating this with you. We can't wait to see you for more access, ideas and insights. And if you're in the room, we invite you to stay and continue the conversation with us. Thank you very much.